Hello and welcome to yet another session of Premed Office Hours. This is episode 152. You can see that we are a little bit light on the people that are participating today, but we'll still do our best to answer any and all questions. We've got a wealth of knowledge still available for you guys to take advantage of. So my name is Courtney Lewis. I'm a prior director of admissions at a medical school in the Southwest, and I am joined by Bernia Granum, who I will let you do your own introduction.
Sure, thank you. Hello, I am a former assistant dean of the Pre-Health Advising Office at Hofstra University in New York, where I am based. Happy to be here today with my friend Courtney. And yeah, it's just the two of us today, but we've got this. We're happy to help answer any and all questions. Go on ahead and post those questions so we can help you all out.
Yeah, so we are two of the advisors that worked and it's kind of hubbed under MSHQ. We work with Dr. Gray and Rachel and Dr. Wright, and we will have two new people joining our team that will also bring their expertise to add into the pool coming up. So we're really excited about that. Keep your eyes out for those announcements. We'll be sharing the pool of knowledge from all of our years of experience. So go ahead and post your questions. We'll take as many as we can in the time allotted that we have, and we'll go from there. So one thing I do actually want to mention, since I'm moderating and I get to be in charge,
You're the boss.
I'm the boss today. Our godfather, Ryan Gray, is on a plane right now. He is headed to a conference. And so he's going to be going and talking to a bunch of advisors and things like that. So we're going to let him go off and do those things. Rachel is going to accompany him. So they'll be in Florida for a little bit. But I do want to mention MappedCon. And some of you, if you have attended this previously, you will hear this is kind of a soapbox for me. But I really want to encourage you guys to attend MappedCon that is coming up in October. We are putting it on. It will be our first in-person version of this. And, you know, I think all of us have attended a lot of pre-health conferences in the past 20 years of our careers. And we are tailoring this to be kind of the pinnacle of pre-health conferences to be really high yield for you guys. So we understand it costs money to travel. Tickets, we're keeping, they're under $100, right? But we understand that hotel and costs like that can add up. So there are ways where you can share rooms with other people who are traveling there. We're facilitating a bunch of connection points for you guys to kind of come and meet people. And we've asked all of our friends to come and be presenters and table. There's going to be directors and deans and recruiters and schools. And if you know anything about med school admissions, I will say, yes, it is very competitive, but this is a good opportunity to actually come in and have some face time with decision makers and have them get to know you, learn your name, build a rapport with them. I know that virtual events are offered and it's a great way to gather information, but a lot of admissions is still a bit old school and they like having that in-person connection, being able to have a conversation with you face to face. So please do not think that it's not worth your time to invest and advocate for yourself in person. So I'm really happy to kind of jump on and join. I was part of the virtual one last year, right after I finished being a director, but I think the in-person one, and I mean, like I said, we're asking people that we know you guys want to talk to and want to make connections with. So do you have anything else to add? I know, like I said, I'm soapboxy about this, but I cannot get through enough.
Agreed.
You need to make these in-person connections. It's high yield. It's the best way to advocate for yourself. I admitted people that I met at conferences and things. Like I can think of one right off the top of my head. It was at a CCNY. And I was at a conference there. 2 years later, she matriculated. She's doing wonderful things. I can think of another one from Utah that I did. So it's just, it's a great way to build that connection.
Yes.
And a sea of applicants.
I was just about to say this process can feel very isolating sometimes. And so it's great to just see other students and meet other people that are kind of going through the same thing as you are. But the benefit of, just like you were saying, Courtney, just making the connections and learning so much from that experience is worth every dime.
It is.
Come.
It is.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So there's that. Just so you guys know, everything's already up and available. So you could start making those plans now for it. I just wanted to get that out there because, again, I think it's really important. I don't know if I've said that, but it's really important.
I don't think so.
So did these things. Okay. Because I know that there was a shift post-COVID. You need to get back to in-person. You need to do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So questions. Do we have anything coming in through our chats?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay. All right. So first one, I appreciate your help. Should I add a high school experience into my activity section? It was one of my first clinical experiences that introduced me to medicine. As somebody who did undergraduate advising for STEM and things, prepping people to go into med school.
Yeah.
Bernie, do you want to take this one?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Johnsy. So most medical schools want to see activities that you've done post high school. You'll find that worded sort of differently on the AMCAS application and the ACOMAS application. In Texas, just flat out, they don't want to see that information at all on the TMDSAS application. So it depends on which application service you're looking, you're applying through. But really, think post high school activities. Maybe if there's an activity that you started in high school and it continued in college, then you can consider including that. But just a high school only experience then doesn't necessarily need to be on the application. It's something you could maybe talk about in a secondary. You can talk about this experience. I started in high school and I continued. This was my first exposure to medicine, that kind of thing. But for the application itself, it's ideally you want to just include your post high school experiences.
Yep.
But great. I'm glad that you got exposed to this. This was what got you started on this path. And hopefully more things have come out of that.
Yep. I concur.
Okay.
Next one. Fluffy Cookie. Okay. I think I've heard that name before.
Right? Yeah.
I think you're a frequent flyer here. Okay. Hello all. Is Casper important for every medical school? If yes, then should I take the exam for 2024 application? Thank you. Well, if even one school wants it for 2024 that you're applying to, yes, you should take it. It's going to be a requirement for their actual matriculation, I'm sure. Now, whether they want that ahead of deciding on an interview or not could be different depending on their process. It's not important for every medical school, though. They will tell you the schools have published whether they want it or not. So it's not something where you're just going to click all and send. If they don't want it, don't send it there. So this will take a little bit of manual labor in doing your research and looking. Some schools may want Casper, some may want Preview, some may want other things on their secondaries or outside of their secondaries. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence and looking for any and all of these types of things, and you're matching it to the school to be specific to them. They love when you just give them exactly what they've asked for and you've followed the directions, and they could tell that you've done your research. If you start sending them a bunch of stuff that they're not asking for or things that they have published and telling you not to do potentially, it's going to look like you're not paying attention. And with a system as competitive as this, that's not really the impression you want to give. So take the time, do it on the front end, but not every medical school is going to want it. No.
Yeah. And then as far as like when to take the exam, now's a good time. So we consider the Casper test part of the and preview part of the secondary application process. So this month coming up, June, even July, is fine to take those tests.
Yep. Just know that they're only really good for one cycle. So you want to take it within the cycle that you have an application open for. Not something that's going to carry over. It's a one and done. That's not the situation. per cycle. So if you're applying for the 2023-2024 matriculation date, which just opened, yes, you'll want to sit for it sometime soon if you have your applications in. Junior, is it a bad idea to mark awards one of your most significant activities? I think it depends on the content.
Yeah.
What did you have to do to win the award? What can you tell me about the significance of it? Why it was impactful, what you did with it. So, I mean, if there's depth and kind of, well, I guess breadth and depth of information that you can share, I wouldn't be put off by seeing that. It's probably not one I see commonly. Vernia, have you seen this very often?
Not quite as often, no.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Context is important. You don't want to necessarily brag that you're the first person to get this award at the school or whatever that is. That's not the reflection that they're looking for. But feel free to expand on the meaning of it for you. Maybe it was significant because you're, a first generation college student or something like that. And you're the first in your family to go to college. And so you got that award and that was meaningful. But so it's not a bad idea. It's just, again, just making sure that that the reflections of it and why it's important to you, show who you are as a person and not to just kind of brag about it.
Right. Framing is important with your wording.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good question though.
Yeah. All right, JB, hello. Hi. How should I approach the YDO secondary essay without sounding buzzwordy and superficial? What is a good starting place to write about why osteopathic medicine? These are tough questions. I know, Vernie, you've probably heard me a lot chirp about this. So
yeah.
I'll kick us off with this one. With the YDO. So let's start with the don'ts. What you don't want to do is an us versus them. Like MDs only look at their patients as symptoms, and I want to look at them as a person. I read that a lot, actually. It sounds pretty negative, and it was viewed pretty negatively. So you definitely don't want to do that. But what do you feel like you will gain from having the additional 200 hours of OMM? Look at what it is. Look at what it's used for. Look at, what could potentially help. Don't use toolkit, right? The buzzwords that you're talking about, holistic, another tool in my toolkit, things like that. But talk about its real life applications, right? One thing that my medical students would tell me actually that they really valued from having that additional time once they got into school was that they felt a lot more proficient in their anatomy and physiology just from having that dedicated time to actually palpate bodies and feel different body types and things like that. They felt like then when they went into the gross anatomy lab, things were tying together much easier in their head. And I thought that was really good insight. So that could be something that may be interesting to you in doing that. Also, look at the tenets of osteopathic medicine. It's more of just a philosophy of kind of the foundation upon which you're teaching, because you're going to learn the same skills, you're going to have the same rights as MDs and things like that. So it's really kind of the foundation of where you start and you build information on, but the information that you're getting is going to be essentially the same. But I would encourage you to read the tenets, see what resonates with you, see if you could pull out anything from that. If it resonates with you, and go from there.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. The whole list, I tell students now in general, just avoid holistic, avoid the word.
Don't use that word.
Don't use it.
Admissions is so sick to death of that word. MD, NDO, like pick a different word. Yeah. They don't want to see it anymore. So go to a thesaurus and start looking at other words that mean essentially the same.
Comprehensive care.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
What else do we got? T. Wallace. Big thank you to the team. You're very welcome.
Aww.
Especially Verenia. Oh,
yay.
She helped me tell my story through my PS. Your free resources were pivotal in getting me into medical school. Thank you for coming back and sharing that.
I know who this is. Oh my gosh, this is such great news. They've provided their stats too. This is amazing.
I'm going to let you read this one.
Sure. So 3.34 GPA went from a 1.9 with an IA in institutional action, 503 to a 508 MCAT, ended the cycle with 6 A's. Fantastic. 2 MD, 4 DO. Wouldn't have been possible without Ask the Dean, Am I Ready, and App Renovation. Thank you so much for letting us know. This makes me so excited. I recognize names, and it's always nice to hear from students who have been successful through all of our resources. Fantastic. Very excited. Congratulations.
Really awesome.
Yeah.
And you did all the work, right? We can give the information, we can give advice, and we can kind of point you on the right path. But unless you're willing to buckle down and actually be open to doing that and taking the advice, it's challenging. And so good on you for going out there and hustling for yourself too. And
that's what I was going to say. Doing the work. That's it. Put in the work. Do what you have to do. It takes several tries sometimes, and that's okay. And this is a perfect example of that perseverance and that resilience. So congratulations, T. Wallace. Yay, I'm so excited.
Very cool.
Okay. Mantos.
Okay, that's
another frequent flyer.
Visual immediately. Okay.
Mantos is another frequent flyer.
Okay. If I submit my application in late June, would I receive secondaries after the application has processed or before then? Well, it depends on which application you're talking about. Okay, so for AMCAS, it'll be after verification, correct?
AMCAS, correct. Okay. Get verified, submit it, transmit it, right.
Yeah, and then a COMIS with the changes that they made, technically, schools, med schools, when you designate them while you're going through the verification process, now this cycle is the very first cycle they can do this. Technically, they can reach out to you to send you a secondary ahead of the official verification. From all of the directors and deans we were talking to on the conferences that we've been attending over these past couple of months, most of them were signaling that they weren't planning on doing that. But then again, we've heard some feedback from some of the people outside of that group saying some med schools, some DO schools were sending or contacting them. So just keep that in mind. If you're talking about a COMIS, there is potential to receive secondaries as it's processing. And then,
and I just heard from Carly behind the scenes, who's one of our fantastic program assistants who also got one pre-verification through AMCAS. So as soon as you hit submit, you could potentially get one.
Okay.
So good to know. Just be prepared. You're not going to be able to, so applications will get transmitted at the end of June. So nothing's going to happen until the end of June in AMCAS anyway, because that's when applications begin going out. So you can expect them around early July. But yeah, as soon as you kind of click submit, pick a school, add your schools, you could potentially get them.
So let's just say when you start designating, technically it's fair game at that point. The school will at least know that they will be receiving your application at some point. So for this cycle and kind of going forward, I would say that would probably be the safest bet and start. There's a hummingbird and I'm 21 stories up. That is so odd. Okay.
In your place?
Yes.
In your apartment?
On my window. It's just okay.
Sorry. Side note.
Yeah. Side note, ADD. But make sure you start checking your spam folders and your junk folders and your email. A lot of the times, if I was bulk sending, if a browser setting was set or school email was set to, this is coming from something that's sending over 100 messages at once, we're going to put it straight to spam. So little tip, make sure that you begin, once you click submit and you submit those applications, start checking not just your inbox, but the spam and junk folder as well.
Exactly. Is the hummingbird okay?
Yeah,
Just flying around.
I have never seen one so
Yeah.
high. I don't know why that didn't click for me, but it was very odd.
All right.
Bruce Taylor. TMDSAS and AMCAS apps are in. Congratulations.
Woo.
So question for y'all, you must be from Texas. Okay. For out-of-state schools where you have very little connection, but like the area, how do you make a connection to interest them? Thanks.
Great question.
Have any tips?
Yeah, I mean, this is tough, right? Because you kind of have to rely on, especially if you've never visited, you just have to rely on their website, the internet, to kind of get familiar with the environment in the area. But do your due diligence, do the research, reach out to anyone who you might know who's in that area that can kind of give you an idea of what type of community they're working in, what population are they serving, and find ways to connect with that. And maybe there's something you're doing that directly ties into what they're doing, and you want to kind of bring that, or something that you're interested in, and you can show in your secondaries and in your interview the connection and your passion for that particular whatever that is. That's a way to try to kind of highlight that, emphasize that. But you can't, you can't force it, you can't fake it, right? To really, you have to just be genuine about understanding what are the dynamics, what are the demographics of that area, what is it that about that area that attracts you beyond just, I really like your school.
Yeah.
Research, Google's your friend. If you can potentially take a trip there before even interviews begin. I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know how far away it is. And just see it for yourself.
Yeah.
See what it's like.
There's a lot of med schools that have student ambassadors too that are medical students. So
True.
they may be a really good resource for you, kind of their lived experience being there, and they may be able to give you some insight. So if you reach out to admissions or student affairs, or, maybe there's a little blurb about them online, then I would encourage you to get in contact with the students, because they're going to be living the dream there, and kind of would be able to provide you with what it's actually like, and answer the questions that you have. I would also say, as far as the school goes, see if there's any clubs and organizations that you want to be part of. Like, is there a draw there? Help them picture you on campus. Who are you going to be on campus? So, kind of find ways to marry yourself to the school of how you will both be successful and how you're going to take advantage of some of the resources that they have. So why did you designate them? If you haven't quite figured that out past just, I have a grandpa there, you're going to need to do some research beyond that. So there are ways, if you really like the curriculum, you could see yourself involved in, a particular club, or you like kind of the mentorship component, things like that. There's a wealth of information that you can draw from that is all good and school specific, that you could talk about, where they can help them make that connection, show them what you're interested in, tell them what you're interested in. Some of my students would say, because they were coming from out of state, they're like, I want a growth opportunity. I don't want to be in the same environment that I've lived in my whole life. I want to grow and expand. I want to get kind of outside of my comfort zone. And I want that in medical school. And I thought that was self-aware, and I liked the authenticity of, like, yeah, I don't have a strong connection, and I purposefully chose it because of that. So it, again, just be honest, but do your research and answer for yourself why you're interested in them. If it needs more depth, find it and then relay that. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yep. All right.
Samantha Lawn. Hi, do med schools count committee letters as one letter, even though it includes 6 LORs? I have an individual letter I wanted to submit in addition to the committee letter, but wasn't sure with schools with a low maximum. It's a great question. You want to take it?
Yeah, I think this is going to be school specific as well. I have seen schools will state on MSAR, for instance, around their rules for recommendation letters, that a committee letter will count as just one letter. This sounds to me like a packet where you have a committee letter and then your other letters of recommendation, and then that whole thing could count as one letter. But again, it's going to be school specific, so you should look at each school's policies around letters of recommendation, and that's where you can find that information on MSAR, and that's where that will be explained. And follow those rules. Don't send more. If they say just send 3 letters, and just send your committee letter and the additional 2 letters. Don't send more than that.
Mm-hmm. Read the directions that are published. Like I said, follow those rules, or else it'll look like you are not doing your research, or you're not going to follow the rules. So, yep. And then with ACOMAS, if you're applying to DO schools, they have a maximum of the 6 letters. Committee will count as one. You'd have the 6 other slots that you could put it in because it's through links. So it'll be a bit different there. All right. Brendan Mayers. Being in clinic and outreach settings for my job, can online OChem courses affect my medical school admissions? It's the best option for time, but I know some schools don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some schools that don't accept it, unfortunately. And so you can kind of do that research and see if it's worth, potentially not being able to apply to those schools. I think you'll be fine though. COVID showed us that we can take classes online and still do well in those classes. So just be aware. Yes, there are some schools that are going to be strict about it. You could potentially, before applying, reach out and say, "This is my situation. Is this okay?" That kind of thing. But you said it. It's the best option for you time-wise. Then go for it. There will be plenty of schools that will be okay with an online OChem course. I would try to maybe see if you can. I don't know if the lab is online as well, but maybe see if you can do the lab in person.
Right.
If that's an option too.
That is usually the biggest kind of sore spot I would hear from faculty. Is like the in-person lab component. So yeah, I agree. If that's a possibility, that would be helpful. Yeah. Faculty don't really feel like you're getting a lot if you're not doing it hands-on. It's a different experience, right? And it probably is. But yeah, they kind of bristle at that.
So the main thing is the most important thing, of course, is check to see what each school requires and whether or not they'd be willing to accept it online.
Yeah, and it sounds like you kind of know that because you say some schools don't like it. That's accurate. That's transparent. That's published information. So yeah, check the schools that you're interested in, see if it will affect them, or your chances there, and then make the decision that works for you. Taylor S. Instead of MSTP, I'm doing PhD first. Okay. I can do shadowing, but should I continue hands-on clinical work too in grad school? Been a steady medical assistant and volunteer caregiver since 16. I'm now 23. You want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Continue hands-on clinical work. Especially since you're thinking PhD first, right? You still want to kind of maintain that connection to hands-on patient care and having your foot in that environment to kind of stay motivated, stay focused, and just building those experiences. Very, very important to continue to do that. Yeah.
It may not have to be to the same capacity that you've been doing, right? But continuing that over time will show that you continue to be interested in learning to become a physician, even though you're doing other degree programs and things like that. So it is still going to be important for med schools to see that. Yeah. At least in some capacity, some hours. And it could be very low over time if it needs to be. But
yeah, maybe reduce your hours, but be consistent with time. A few hours a month, a few hours a week, whatever that is, that works for your schedule, but just being consistent with that is important.
Yep. All right. Next question. We're cruising through these. I feel like we're really being efficient.
I know.
Okay. Let's see. Hello, I just wanted to make sure for AMCAS and ACOMAS, we can submit the application without the letters, right? And then attach the letters later.
Yes. Letters, assuming letters of recommendation, yes. You don't need your letters to apply. You can submit your application without them. The letters can come later.
Yeah. But in the same breath, we were just saying how once you kind of designate a school and you submit it, technically they have the option of sending you secondaries and things like that. If they're still viewing your application as complete, it could change the timing a little bit. But still, if you're kind of on the ideal timeline, which is applying early and getting everything in, probably won't have high impact, but just know, I mean, they may be able to see it and it may affect timing a little bit on that.
Okay, good point.
All right. Carlos, sorry, I didn't read the name on the last one. Sometimes I forget that. Carlos, do you recommend talking about institutional actions again in the additional information part of your secondaries if it was put in your primary application? That depends on the prompt.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've been able to do a really thorough job of talking about the institutional action. We just saw evidence earlier that you can get admitted to medical school with an IA. It happens, but it's because people actually learn and grow from those experiences, and there's some time and distance between the person you were then and the person that's coming to us at the medical school. So if secondary prompt asks for such information, I don't see why not. I wouldn't copy paste it thinking that maybe they just didn't read what was in your primary and you're just gonna also put it here just in case. Don't do that. That's a waste of characters. It's not worth doing. But if it's applicable to the prompt, it's okay. But also make sure it's needed or necessary, because if you just like continue to like drive this home, it's like, okay, we get it. Like, okay, we understand.
Right.
So I would say trust your gut on that. You know, make sure you're being transparent, honest, do your due diligence, but don't feel like every opportunity that's open-ended, you need to talk about the same thing.
Right.
Like at some point it's too much. So
most important thing is read that prompt.
Read the prompt. That's for any secondary ever across the board. Please read the prompts, you guys. Please underline, like take the time to copy and paste it somewhere and underline what it is they're actually asking, because sometimes that question is buried. Sometimes you're focused on the wrong thing and then you kind of answer it a bit off. Read the prompt, underline what you need to do.
Yeah, like for instance, if it's a question like, you know, is there any additional information that you would like to share that would help us in making a decision? I don't know that I'd talk about the institutional action, right? You might want to focus on something else that would highlight more about why you'd be a good fit at that school.
Yep.
So very important to read the prompt.
Yep.
Okay.
Malay, okay, would I be able to boost my GPA in 2 semesters? I have a science GPA of 2.86 and would really want to apply next year. Any tips? My trend is really up and down. Hard to answer, given the information presented. It's really going to be determined by how many credits you already have for your science GPA. The more credits you have, the harder it is to kind of move that ticker up. So really, we can't fully answer this question. 2 semesters, if you're already still yo-yoing with your GPA, is probably not going to be enough for most schools to have the evidence that they want that the years of the up and down are behind you. So I'm assuming probably not going to be enough to move the GPA or provide the evidence.
Yeah, MLA, if you'd like, I'd recommend going on to Mapped, creating a free account there if you haven't already. Map.com. It allows you to enter your courses, your grades, so you can see those trends, and maybe even chat with one of us through the advising link there, and we can go in and take a look and give you some more detailed information based on the information that you provide there. So go ahead and check that out, map.com. You can get a free 30-day trial using code 30 days free. And that gives you access to the chat advising feature as well. So you can fill in your information, let us know in the chat, hey, I'd like some feedback on my trends and my plans,
Mm-hmm.
and we can take a look.
Yeah. Landon, my state school doesn't have physics as a prereq requirement. It's just listed in the recommended courses. Thoughts on applying with a good MCAT? It's the only school I'm applying to. How can you get a good MCAT without
physics?
Physics.
Yeah.
I mean, you could maybe self-teach. This seems risky to me right off the bat. It's not jiving.
Agreed.
I don't know how well you'll do on the MCAT without it. Now, again, you can self-teach some components. If you don't get into your state school and you need to apply a bit more broad next cycle, you're going to be in a real pickle, because you're going to need a whole year of physics that you haven't taken, because it's going to be required essentially for every other institution that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
So this seems a bit risky.
And the fact that they're only applying to this school too also seems a little risky. Not sure what the circumstances are around that. But as you were saying, if you do end up having to reapply, it's probably best to take it.
And while it's just recommended for your state school, remember that those are called minimum requirements, right? Like these are the bare minimum. If you can take beyond that, it will give you a stronger foundation upon which to build upon while in med school. So I'm not sure for their curriculum where they think people are going to have the physics components that they need for their foundation for that. But, maybe they have some kind of entry level buffers in place for making sure that you have that content. But and this is something I would tell undergrads whenever we do, presentations or mentorship and questions kind of like this would come up. I think it's not a great look or signal if you're already trying to get out of some of the science coursework to meet kind of standard minimums, even if it's just recommended, because we're going to be putting you in 36 credit hours of science, and you're going to be doing science forever. And so if you're already looking for ways to kind of like, what do I not have to take? That kind of lets me think that maybe this is not the path for you. And that you need to really have an honest conversation with yourself of like how you want to start medical school and if medical school is the path. Because there's a disconnect here in the coursework so that may not be you. I'm making a very generalized statement across the board, just sending it out into the nether. But if you're trying to find ways to not take science courses, eesh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. Alrighty.
Okay, Jasmine. Once we've submitted our apps, how should we interact with admissions reps during info sessions and conferences? What sorts of questions should we ask? How should we advocate for ourselves? Great question. We can send some positive advice out. You wanna start?
Yeah, sure. I love this question because Jasmine, you're already being proactive about your application. Of course, if you get an opportunity to attend conferences and information sessions, dress professionally, dress appropriately as you would for a conference. Very important. Top to bottom, right? Presenting the best version of yourself. And you would approach them with potentially contact information for yourself. I've heard some recommendations to have a business card with like your AMCAS ID number or your ACOMAS number to share with admissions officials. And yeah, feel free to approach them, ask them questions about their program, about their school, introduce yourself, obviously, get to know them, show an interest in the school that's there represented, and keeping in mind that, as Courtney was saying, they will remember you. So you want to make that first impression as soon as you meet with them, right? Just remembering their name, maybe following up after the conference with an email to thank them for their time. I think that's the best way to kind of make that first impression. And to, I don't recommend saying, hey, I just applied to your school, what do you think of my application? That's not the best way to advocate for yourself. It comes like slowly, right? Just, again, introducing yourself, showing the interest is there, having specific things that you can mention and highlight about the school and how that aligns with your own goals. They'll remember that. They will definitely remember that. Do you have any other advice for them, Courtney?
No, I agree with everything that you said. I would say, energy is kind of infectious. So if I feel like you are genuinely curious and excited about where you're at in the process, I've got my application in, I'm really excited about, progressing forward with your school, and I like this about it, and I want to be involved in this, and I really like this, what else can you tell me about the school? What are your favorite parts? Asking questions where there's options for like positivity when you're already interested and curious, and we can tell, is such a good time. And that's why I really liked attending these conferences, because even if somebody was nervous or things like that, when people would come and they genuinely wanted to connect and find out information, and they were open to what should I be doing with my time, right? I'm really nervous and I'm waiting to hear back and things. What do you suggest I'm doing? How's best to learn about the area that I'd be moving to? Is there any way to connect with students and things like that, right? Showing that you're genuinely interested and that you're seeking for these connection points and more information is going to be best. And that's a really great way to advocate for yourself. You don't have to like sell yourself on qualities or anything like that. That comes across as weird, right? You wouldn't do that in a normal conversation. Right. As you're trying to make a friend with somebody, it would be awkward. So just a lot of it is going to be soft skills, right? Just having a conversation, seeming and hopefully are genuinely interested, those types of things, it'll go a long way. And coming up and being able to introduce yourself. Sometimes that's really hard, especially when you're in a big conference hall and there are a bunch of people and we all look like we're waiting to pounce on you as soon as you even glance our way. That's not a bad thing. We're there because we want to talk to you and we want to give you information. We do want to connect. That's the whole reason that we're there. So see it and take advantage of that opportunity. We want to talk to you. So while you may be nervous, still take the time, come, tell us your name, introduce yourself, learn about the school, learn about the area, learn about the students.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. Christine, okay. Do career changers approach the personal statement the same way as a traditional applicant? I know I need to answer why medicine, but not sure if I need to address why not my old job. This is a great question.
It is, yes.
I love the way that it's posed. This is a very common question that we get. The prompt remains the same, I will say, first and foremost, right?
Exactly.
By the end of it, doesn't matter if it's been 20 years since you were out of school or you're a junior in your undergrad going straight in, I still need the answer to why medicine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. You don't have to go into this like long story about your previous career. Why not your old job? That's not the goal here. The goal is really, as you were saying, Courtney, just why medicine. So dedicate, it's a very short amount of space. It's just 5,300 characters, 5,000 only for Texas. So really just dedicate that space to highlighting the whys, the why. What are the things that got you interested in medicine? You may have to, if it has anything to do with your previous job, you may have to kind of talk a little bit about that, but not from the sense of, oh, I felt unfulfilled in my previous job, or I felt like something was missing. More so, I did this. This was really cool. I got exposed to this. I wanted to see that again and again and more and get more of that. So again, why medicine? Not so much why not my old job. Don't spend too much character space on that, because that's not necessary. They really just want
neither here nor there. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? They just want to know what got you interested in it. How do you know that you want to continue to do this? What are the things that you've seen and done? And then how do you see yourself now in the future moving forward? What are your goals? That's it. It's no different from a traditional applicant.
Yeah. And I have had, I've worked a lot with non-trads, and it is very difficult to condense down a career or a lifetime or multiple pivots in career or building blocks that have kind of led you. So if things are applicable to your why medicine, right? Like you thought the end goal was going to be a researcher, then you got a little insight and you got a little bit more. And so you took the next step, and then you went into physical therapy, and then you went into this and then this. That's okay. But again, don't focus on the why not this. Focus on a more positive thing of like, I learned and I want to continue to learn. And this led me to this path of where now I'm sure this is what I want to do going forward. So don't feel like you can't discuss it, that it's, kind of this blacklisted information. If it's applicable, okay, but it shouldn't be the focal point.
Right.
We don't need a justification. We just need to know kind of the path to medicine, why you're at this point that you're at now.
And don't sort of tangentially related to that, don't be afraid to include, obviously, in your activities, your previous experiences, because those are still valid. Those still count, even if it's not in the same, like medical area. That's okay. Don't exclude it because of that. So you don't have to talk about it in your personal statement, but you can definitely talk about that previous career, whatever it was that you were doing before medicine, on the activities.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes, this may or may not resonate with you, but sometimes non-trads feel like it's the longest shot ever. They're gonna, like I'm less valuable as an applicant, and I don't see evidence of that.
No.
A lot of life experience and maturity, and what I appreciated, kind of the things that I appreciated most about my non-trad students that become medical students, is I know for a fact they want it. They had to make a conscious choice to make this dream come true. Right. I know that they want it, and they are going to make it work. They're also a bit mature and resilient and kind of gritty, right? Because they have that knowledge that this is a goal and they've worked really hard for it. And that's not to say that an undergrad coming straight out doesn't have those things too, but it's really valuable. And sometimes life needs to be lived, and these types of decisions need to be kind of laid in front of you to have that true knowledge,
that insight,
that true north. And so I always really appreciated that, and never had problems, professionalism problems and things like that. No way. For a non-trad, they're used to working with a team. They're used to being accountable for their time and their schedule. You could stick them into 3rd and 4th year rotations at a functioning hospital or private practice or surgical center. Never had to worry about them being problematic in that sphere because they've actually held jobs and they know what it is work in that environment. So there's a lot of really valuable things that come with being a non-trad student.
Absolutely.
So go for it.
Yes. Good luck, Christine.
Mr. O, okay. Can you have the same most meaningful experience as a reapplicant? Why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. These are things you've done in the past, right? There's only so much you're going to change or reflect upon.
Right.
I would double check it to make sure it says what you want. There's not any ways to kind of polish it up anymore, or maybe that the focus is done properly, that they're getting the right content. But yeah, I mean.
Agreed. No, you don't have to change them. Just like you said, maybe you have new insights now into those experiences that you can talk about. It shouldn't just be a word for word like copy paste, because presumably a year has passed, so there's more stuff to talk about now.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh. CC's candy floss? Is that what it is? Something like that. Okay. You know who you are. Okay. Yes. Is it a red flag if I only have 20 hours of shadowing? I do have a lot of clinical experience, but not sure if that can compensate. To me, it's really up to you. If you have clinical hours, that's great. Says you have a lot of them, good job. Usually, I would say shadowing hours do tend to be a bit lower because you're just observing. I think it'll depend on how many specialties or different providers that includes. And if you feel like you have the breadth and depth to kind of talk about what a day in the life of a physician looks like, because if most of your clinical is at one location under one provider, maybe 1 or 2 shadowing opportunities each for 10 hours, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to speak to kind of broad scope. So maybe that's where the problem kind of comes in. But if you have that, then it's better than 0 and may not be an issue.
Right. And you know, the clinical experience that you do have, are you directly working with patients, or are you kind of in a research setting? Is it not as patient facing? So it depends on the clinical experience as well, which then goes back to what you were saying. Then potentially you might run into a concern. But clinical experience, right, equals direct patient care, where observing, shadowing the doctor, you're just watching them. So it depends on what you're doing. What is your clinical experience? But I agree with you, Courtney. I think that it's not a red flag necessarily, but it is something that if you haven't kind of been around patients enough, may be a concern for some schools. That's all.
The reason that we ask you guys to go out and get these types of opportunities and experiences under your belt is not because we're just trying to make it more arduous. It's because we want you to actually see and know what it is you're getting into, because it's really difficult. And once you start, you don't stop. And so going out and actually seeing different patient populations, different providers, different day-to-day, and the different responsibilities and nuances and admin sides of things, in hospitals and surgical outpatients, in county clinics. These are very different physician experiences, even across the same specialty. So being able to have that insight and actually know and be able to speak to it is important. And we want you guys to have that insight ahead of starting such a difficult program. So that's why we ask you to have it, to make sure that you know what it looks like and what it is you're getting into.
Yeah, you don't want to wait until the first day of your rotations to realize that you don't like patient care.
No.
You want to know that way ahead of time.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions?
Want to do
one more, maybe? Sure.
One more, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie, okay, hi. how much should we elaborate on conferences? Applying MD, PhD next year and have presented at multiple, some especially impactful. Should I split presented and attended? Thanks. So excited for Matt.
Great question, Allie. I think it's going to depend on your total number of activities. So if you're applying to AMCAS and you're limited to just 15, you may have to collapse some, depending on how many others you have there. With ACOMAS in Texas, you have, an unlimited number of spots where you can potentially split there. I think assuming AMCAS, limited number of entries for activities, focus on those really impactful ones and describe a little bit about like what your research was, but what the presentation was about, but really go more into that impact of that experience. I don't think you need to split presented and attended. You can just say in one entry, I attended this conference and I presented there. And then, like I said, go into the experience itself and the meaning and the impact behind that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Want to end it here?
Unless we have one more. We have time for one more.
Carly, do we have anything on the back end?
It's been a quiet day. But great questions. Oh, one more. Okay.
All right. Okay, Jody. I'm a nurse for 7 years with a BA Biology 2.0, an associate's degree 3.8, BSN 3.7 overall, 3.48 science, 3.2. I have all other components, but just got a 490 on the MCAT. Should I take a chance and apply? That's a tough score. Let's have some candid conversation here because we're very transparent. I would say that would be a difficult score to have a seat offer with if we're just looking at that in isolation.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, go ahead. Sorry. No, you go ahead.
I had a thought. So the reason for that is if you look at the subsection scores of a 490, you're falling well below the 50 percentile of content knowledge for each of those subjects. And so it doesn't really signal that you have the proficiency or the understanding of that material that's really necessary and going to be built upon in medical school as far as just sheer foundational science knowledge. You may have it. It may just not be carrying over into a standardized test setting, which if you're sitting for boards in 2 years, they'll also see as problematic. So it's kind of twofold here where they are risk adverse, right? But if they have signals or data points where it's like, it's showing here, and if you had a 487 prior to that, it's showing well below 50 percentile with all of the subsections. And so it would probably be fairly difficult to overcome that score to get an outright seat offer.
Yeah, agreed. So, I know everyone's kind of anxious to apply and getting impatient, but being intentional about this process is so important. And if you know that, you can go back and look and see, okay, what are my areas? Where did I struggle? What do I need to do to improve? Take the time to do that and apply when you're ready, when those practice test scores are getting closer to what your target is. I agree with you, Courtney.
Yeah, I would sit out this cycle, and I would take full length timed practice test. I would kind of identify if it was the content knowledge is all there. It's literally just test taking skills, or if it's a combination of both, where you may need content building or review and test taking skills to make the two correlate. So identify what's the miss on here. And then once you kind of do that, obviously, being able to do that. In the meantime, use UWorld, use Anki, for flash decks and things like that, for content knowledge and just for tracking. It will tell you, if you're consistently getting a subject or questions within a category wrong, it'll start giving it to you more frequently and things like that. There are preformed decks. So those are some resources that will help you for that. There are, programs out there that can also help you with test taking skills, or you can do that on your own. And then sit for full length timed practice tests periodically to check your progress. I always personally tell people, take the score and subtract 3 to 5 points from your practice test. If you're still comfortable with that score, minus those points, then you're potentially ready to sit for it. If you're not, and you're barely hitting that target market in your practice test, you're not going to be able to account for what information is presented the day of. So, a 3 to 5 point fluctuation is not unrealistic. And so you may end up falling more on this side than you would going up. So
yeah,
that would be my advice.
Yeah. Practice test. It's going to help with your timing. It's going to help with just getting into the rhythm too.
Yep. Those are long passages, being able to identify what it is you're looking for in that time frame. It's not an easy test for sure, but great questions.
Yeah.
Today, you guys, thanks for participating with us. We know it's a very stressful time in the cycle, but also a very cool, kind of exciting part of the cycle, right? We're just opening and getting kicked off, and dreams are going to be made this year, which is a cool thing after you've done a ton of work to get you to this point. So
absolutely. And we're glad to be here for you all as well. Thank you all.
We're here to help.
Thanks, Courtney.
Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Brianna. This was nice.
It was.
I feel like, we were efficient.
We got it. We got this. Bye, everyone.
Bye.